Time to smash it up here on Warchant TV on a Monday night. I'm joined by Ira Schafel, managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang, and you are watching the Monday Smash on Warchant TV, presented by State Farm agent Russ Forrest. I do have a game for us before we get into the talk tonight. If you made a 30-foot eagle putt in the last week, please raise your hand.
Was it 30? I don't know. It was ballpark. Ballpark-ish.
It was ballpark of 30. If you threw your putter after you made an eagle putt, please raise your hand. There we go. All right. Awesome. We're off to a good start. There's a good story there. If you folks want to know about it, ask us in the chat. But we're starting the Monday Smash here. Just a few minutes behind. We have some tech difficulties. If we have anything that persists during the show, we'll work through it. But we appreciate you all being here and hitting the thumbs up as you enter on Warchant TV. After week 2 has completed for spring football, Ira, that's where we're going to get to tonight. Got a lot of talk about week 2 of football practice, including a scrimmage number 1 of the new coordinator's era. So there's a lot to uncover tonight, man.
Yeah, and Luke Laux and FSU basketball just got their second transfer signee that we just put up the story right before we started. Lajai Jones out of St. Bonaventure, kind of a wing, small forward wing type player who actually averaged over 10 points and 5 rebounds a game this past season. It was a really nice pickup, I think, out of the portal to go with Kobe McGee, who they got over the weekend. So, Luke's not often sprinting out into the portal, but I think often running is fair to say. 2 really nice signees so far.
Yeah, the Noles got themselves a Bonnie. That's cool. 2 now for Luke Laux, who has been extremely aggressive in terms of raising funds to try and get Florida State to a level where it can compete with all the Joneses now in the college basketball landscape. That's Chalk Fest, this year's March Madness. Unfortunately, there was a choke job in San Francisco over the weekend that we won't reflect on too much, other than, hey, Ira, did you think you could just invent your own way to just kind of dribble past the key, turn around, just throw something up, and it'll rattle home for you? Because I don't think that'll happen for most people, other than those that wear orange and blue, apparently.
Well, listen, dude, I'm not going to – anything that kid does with a basketball, I'm not going to say is luck. He's a beast. But Clayton's unreal. But I just could not believe how Texas Tech just completely melted. You're up by 10 and can't hit a free throw, ridiculous fouls, decisions. I mean, it was just a complete meltdown. But no, I give Florida credit, man. They're really good. I think Duke's got something for them. Yeah. If they both, but it's the Gators it's a legit team this year.
I can't believe I have to, and I really haven't watched too much of the tournament, but I can't believe that I have to pull for Bruce Pearl now against Florida. That's just that seems to be where the year is in college basketball. That's all right. Hopefully Florida State gets those conversations anywhere in the realm of those types of conversations here in the near future. Football right now is on the minds of everybody, and coming out of spring scrimmage number 1, those interviews I found interesting. Ira, you were in the room for all of these interviews, but I just, it sounded almost like a bit of hot potato in terms of who had the better day. Like Mike Norvell started out talking about the defensive line and the linebackers setting the tone. Then, Gus Malzahn spoke on the things he liked, he didn't like about where they were. Progress report. They ran the 100 plays. He liked that. But you could tell that he thinks that they're a work in progress on a lot of fronts. And then Tony White spoke about, the adversity that this defense had faced when they spiraled on Thursday afternoon in practice. And he liked the response on Saturday. But it sounds like all coaches felt kind of good and kind of bad about some things after scrimmage 1. Was it, you think, a little bit of back and forth? Is that the sense you get from after listening to those guys and milling about for information?
Yeah, no, I think so, which is pretty standard. But what's interesting to me about Gus Malzahn, I haven't written about this, or Corey, I didn't mention it at the wrap, but I thought something that's interesting about him is, look, I mean, I think he's going to get a feel for the players. I mean, that was one of the big takeaways he had from the scrimmage, is just knowing who he could count on. That's such a big part of what he's going to do offensively is understanding what guys can do in certain situations, and then really trying to feature them to their strengths, playing to their strengths. But I thought the most upset he seemed by the whole scrimmage was that guys weren't fast enough getting the ball to the referee to go hurry up. Like, you could tell that like got under his skin. We're gonna have to address that. And so, again, man, but I think that's cool because, he knows how this thing has to operate. And so he's going to have standards to, from everything from how quickly you get up and get the ball to the official so we can run the next play, to how quickly, if we ever do substitute. I mean, there's just a lot of things that go into it beyond just calling plays and having players. And I think that the fact that, he didn't seem to think it was a disaster. I don't think and he said they've kept it very basic. They're not putting in a whole lot yet, but so far, but yeah, I don't think either side was giddy about it, but I don't think either side was really upset either.
Yeah, the things like this. So Gus was happy about a few things and he's grumpy about a few things.
Right.
And this is my takeaways. You tell me if I'm reading this right. A thing that Gus was grumpy about. He's frustrated that they don't have more defined roles on the offensive line except for center right now. He likes center, but you could tell he's kind of tired with the shuffling of all the other pieces, and he would like to have defined, starters and backups, I think, at all the other 4 spots. Did you catch that too? Because he said that in passing after praising his center. After he's like, well, we had to shuffle a lot of other guys. But Luke is doing pretty good. So I think he wants a little bit more out of that position group in terms of defined roles.
Yeah, and Mike Norvell hasn't talked too much about offensive line injuries, but we do know that a few guys have been banged up through the first couple weeks. And he did say very early, I think at the start of camp, that Jalen Early would be kind of limited. He's a guy we think might be in the mix. I think some of the other guys that are, some of the older veteran players are nicked up right now. So they're not able to just stick with 5 guys. And so they were probably always going to do some mixing and matching, but I think they're having to do a little bit more than usual. And again, that doesn't mean it's not necessarily going to affect anything 5 months from now, but for his purposes, I'm sure he would like to have 5 that he can really count on. And I don't think they're anywhere close to that.
Yeah, we also knew that, tackle transfer Gunnar Hansen was going to be limited for much of camp, if not all of camp, and that's one of your anchors on the offensive line too. So you're almost playing an imaginary game when you roll out your first team. You're like, all right, well, that's not exactly going to look the way I know it's going to look. That's before we get into, any other guys that are.
I think and Norvell did confirm last week. I forgot he did confirm that Jacob Rizzi's out for the rest of the spring. He's a guy that probably is in that mix. It's certainly in the 2 deep. Could be competing for a starting job. So yeah, man, it's that's a position, especially putting in a new offensive system. I'm sure not having your line is not ideal.
Is this a JCS only take? Because Jeff and I don't agree with everything in terms of the ups and downs of camps or seasons, Ira, but we both are in agreement that when we heard Mike Norvell say that they were limited in special teams work for the scrimmage, that we were like, yes, that is awesome. Sounds really good. They ran, by one count, 120 some odd plays, Gus's count, 100 plays. I like the idea of, if you're trying to learn about your group, and Gus clearly favors scrimmages to regular practices, and so does Tony White, the less special teams, the better for that period of evaluation. It sounds like they got a lot of work in there on Saturday. Do you agree with the less special teams better for a scrimmage day?
Honestly, I'm not as, I get it. And I know from when we were out there watching practices, Jeff and Corey and other people would complain a lot about how much special teams they do. I honestly haven't watched a lot of college football teams to know what is the standard. I haven't watched a lot of full practices to know. I watch plenty of college football teams, but not full practices. But so I think that's a sore subject for them. I will say this. I heard that, Jake Weinberg, the freshman kicker who, whatever they did in the scrimmage, I heard his leg was very impressive. So I do think they did some, but yeah, I get it. That's definitely I know it's a hot button topic for Jeff for sure.
It is. Well, it'll also be interesting to see, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but in certain situations this season, if Florida State has a 4th and 3.5 from, say, the 38 or the 39 yard line on the other side of the 50 yard line, do you just go ahead and line it up? Because I'm hearing the same thing, that kid's leg is out of control in terms of the routine distances that he can hit. Now it's a question of pressure and situations and ingratiating yourself to the college game and a game day setting. But it sounds like Weinberg, distance-wise, ain't no problem, Ira, from 55 or 57 or 58.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Now, again, will the accuracy always be there? And again, when we were out there at practice last year when he was a true freshman, he definitely, there were days where he looked great, and then there were days where he didn't look nearly as sharp as Ryan Fitzgerald. So there's going to be a drop off, I'm sure, in terms of accuracy, but the leg strength is awesome. And it opens up some possibilities for you that, maybe they weren't as comfortable. I thought it was pretty interesting that Fitzgerald did his 60-yarder at the combine. There were a few times where I felt like maybe Mike Norvell could have given him a chance to kick a couple really long ones, but Weinberg, I definitely don't think that's going to be an issue for him.
That would be an interesting dynamic to watch during the season too, is who makes that decision about fourth and not. I mean, look, it's ultimately going to be the head coach's call if he wants it to be, but does Mike in a 4th and 2.5 or 4th and 3 yield to the offensive coordinator and say, look, if you feel like you have a chance to make a play here, go ahead and call it. That'll be fun to monitor this year. It does seem to me, though, last thing on the offense, we can talk on Tony White's side just a second, but it seems like Gus also has had his fill of doing the basics, and it seems like he wants to start to add some layers to what he's doing offensively, because he did say in the scrimmage press conference that everything's been very basic, but it sounds like he's ready to at least advance it a little bit and add some of those wrinkles that he often displays in his 15, 20 years of coaching offense.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, I'm sure, because, his base offense stuff, there's nothing. It's not the most elaborate offense in the world. The reason you can run it fast, the reason you can run it quick is in high tempo is because, a lot of things are relatively simple. They're not super complicated routes with a lot of reads. So he does need to get to where he starts adding more of the eye candy, the things that create challenges for the defense. And especially, if the defense is winning the day or periods during practice, I'm sure as a competitor, he wants to kind of have his arsenal out there. But, the good thing about it is both sides are kind of going through this. I mean, I think Tony White's probably in the same boat. I'm sure there's plenty of things that he would like to get to that he hasn't gotten to either, but he wants his guys to play fast. And I thought that was really consistent. You heard from both coordinators that, really the key right now is getting guys to know exactly what they're doing so they can play free and fast, and then, start adding on to it.
It sounds like to me that Tony White is much more willing to acknowledge, at least publicly, like when the cameras are on and the tapes are rolling, that he has some psychological work to do on the group, to repair broken confidence, to, allow guys to flush a bad play, an explosive play against, and then just line up and make the next play, and or mitigate damage. If you have a busted assignment, doesn't mean the kid needs to score. It just means you got to get him to the ground, and, it's too bad that we didn't hold him to 6 when it was 3rd and 12. But it sounds like he is acknowledging that and speaking out on the regular. I mean, I don't think the scrimmage is the first time he's spoken on working on guys between the ears, but that seems to be, whereas Gus is speaking about the foundations of the offense and going fast and being efficient, Tony White is willing to have that larger discussion about, allowing these guys to harness the athleticism that they intrinsically have for being at Florida State.
Yeah, and I think that, going back to the end of last season, I really thought that would be a key for this season. And I think we've made the comparison to Mark Stoops when he came in as defensive coordinator, when Jimbo Fisher came in, that, the first thing he had to do was just get some confidence in those guys and make them feel good about themselves. And that first year, that was as big as anything. He got those guys to, just that 2009 defense was so bad, and they just got their teeth kicked in week after week after week. And in 2010, he just got them competent, and it was a huge boost for a lot of those guys. And those guys played key roles over those next couple of seasons leading up to the championship. And I think the job is similar for Tony White. I think maybe it's not as big of a deal for Gus Malzahn because the offense is going to be so new. It's not like you're rolling the same quarterback out there. It's not like you're rolling really the same wide receivers or the same offensive linemen out there. I mean, it is a whole new offense. So maybe he doesn't have as much work to do there. Defensively, you have a bunch of those linebackers all played last year. They wore it. Some of those defensive linemen did. Darryl Jackson, several of the DBs did. Maybe not they weren't starters last year, but they were part of it. So yeah, I think he's got a bigger job to do. And I think, again, I think he's a good guy for it. You and Jeff touched on it today. And I think Aslan and Corey talked about Wake Up Warchant also, that just, he's a guy that he seems to, confidence is a big part of playing defense. He knows that, and he seems to do a good job of imparting that into his players, because you heard him talk about some of the players during just these last couple of practices, him seeing the light come on in that area.
Tony White doesn't strike me as Mr. Hyperbole. To me, he seems like a motivator, not somebody who is just, a catchphrase type of guy, or he places expectations at people to hype them up. We've had that problem at Florida State over the years. I remember before James Blackman's first start, Jimbo didn't take any pressure off of James Blackman. Good God, the way that he spoke about him, and I forget the center's name at the time, the offensive line. I was
Alec Eberle, maybe, or was it
Eberle. They were like, this kid's, you wouldn't believe how great this kid is. Cool under pressure. It's going to be no problem. And I just felt like that was really unfair and undue because, the kid's making his first start. However, with all that said, Tony White doesn't strike me that way. And yet, let's see, God got a tray. I am God. That's an excellent name. God says that Tony White referred to Earl Little Jr. as him. I heard that as well in the press conference.
He did.
From an effort standpoint last year, sure, relative to his segment mates in the secondary, I felt like he was him because he would get downhill. Earl Little, like few others, Edwin Joseph maybe was one of those who would get downhill and play with ferocity. But I wouldn't have said that Earl Little looks like somebody who knows the intricacies of the Adam Fuller defense. So do you buy it? Because immediately after we put that little the note on social media, and like all of the skeptics came out and they came running with their pitchforks. Do you buy it that Tony White really thinks that Earl Little has made this jump, and maybe that there's chatter around the team that Earl Little has turned into something that could be pretty fun?
Yeah, I mean, when you say buy it, like I don't know that I'm like assuming he's just going to be a star when the season starts, but I do believe that he's making plays out there at practice. And the other thing about Earl Little was when we talked to Patrick Surtain about him on the first day, it was 2 days before practice, that little media event we had with the assistant coaches, he was really high on what Earl Little can do at that rover position. And he said, he's like, look, man, I coached him in high school. And you got the sense that he didn't really think, I don't know, man. When he went to Alabama, they weren't sure coming out of high school. Was he a corner? Is he a safety? Is he a nickel? And then he had some injuries there, and it never really worked out. And then he comes here, and then again dealt with some injuries early, I think in camp or early in the season. And then they were trying him at nickel, and it was not a good fit. Then they moved him to safety, and like you said, you kind of started to see the light come on. But when Patrick Surtain said, he goes, man, I've coached him since high school. He is that physical. I know he's that guy. And he told us, I didn't realize this. He said, but the rover is kind of the captain of the defense. He said the rover is going to be making a lot of the calls for the secondary, which is interesting to me. To me, you would think if you had a Shaheem Brown when he's available, that he'd be making the calls just because he's that older dude that's played a ton of football. But it sounds like it is specific to that position. I guess that guy determines a lot of by what he's going to do, where he's going to play. He has a lot of freedom to come in the box or drop deep. Basically, he can do almost anything. I mean, he can play any role. And Surtain was really fired up about him. So then to hear some of the things that Mike Norvell has said about him, and then for Tony White to say that, there's a mounting evidence that it's really a good spot for him. But yeah, I mean, between the injuries and the fact that he hasn't done it in games, I mean, it's hard to get too crazy about it.
Yeah, agreed. And you're looking for little clues here and there. I also think based upon his interview, he does seem, last week he was made available to the media. He does exude a different confidence. I felt that way about watching Juice Cryer's interview. It's not that Juice ever has had a bad media session. He's always very good in front of the camera, but there does seem to be evidence that there is fun being had with this Tony White scheme. And so
I thought, and one other guy, I just put a story up on the site today from on Jabril Rawls, a cornerback, who, when we asked him about these schemes, he's like, man, I loved it from day one. Matter of factly, like those DBs are excited about it. Now they'll have to make plays and they have to not give up big plays. But I feel like they're getting what they wanted. One other thing, I know we weren't planning to talk about this, but I thought Josh Farmer's comment in his pro day interview, the day before pro day when they were here, Josh Farmer said that when he went to the Senior Bowl, they said, listen, man, just attack, just get upfield. Don't worry about anything else. Don't read anything. Just get upfield. He goes, and I started doing that, and they were like blown away. And I just was thinking about so much in that defensive front last year. I felt like so many times there was a lot of, reading and trying to figure out what was happening before they just penetrated upfield. And listen, man, there's more to college football. There's more to football than just getting upfield. But sometimes when you have those kinds of athletes, those kinds of talents, you got to let them go. And I think so I think that might have been the case up front, maybe with Daryl Jackson and Josh Farmer. Sometimes people felt like they weren't as aggressive as they needed to be. And then I think in the back end, always playing man, they played man 90% of the time, getting more chances to play zone, get their eyes on the quarterback and make plays. We may see a lot of these guys kind of get a whole lot. They're going to get more opportunities to make plays. We'll see what they do with them, but they're excited about it.
And that can happen up front. And Noel Sage, I appreciate the contribution. I like the question. We're going to get to that in a second. But I remember doing a couple interviews with Niall Lawrence Stampa last year and talking about how he was coached differently with the different defensive coordinators at his time. Now, NLS was on a lot of excellent defenses, including a national championship defense at Florida State. But he was asked to do very, very different things in his time here. Mark Stoops was, to your point, hey, you guys are super talented, go eat. Like, that's literally the coaching they got. It was, we're going to line you up. Here is where you're supposed to line. Go ahead.
He simplified everything to get them confident, right?
Yep. Yeah. And he said, now go get them to the front. And then for Jeremy Pruitt / Charles Kelly, but more Jeremy Pruitt, there were a bunch of, as NLS put it, if-then statements. If this guy's over here, I must do this. If that guy's over there, if they line up this way, then I must do that. He said that Charles Kelly ended up being kind of the middle ground of the two for the defensive front. He didn't have as many if-then statements, but it can get that complicated is my point. That's what I learned out of it is even for a defensive lineman, somebody who's going to line up basically over the ball or next to the football, it can get to where there's paralysis by analysis before you play. What's interesting to me about this defense, Ira, is it feels like there's a lot more teaching that needs to be done, especially at the linebacker and the secondary level, some more if-then statements. But it seems like the kids really enjoy it so far, which a lot of times you would get either overwhelmed energy or excited energy. At least when the players that are made available to us are speaking about the defense, they seem to like it because maybe they do get a chance to go show and make more plays in the backfield or on the ball.
Yeah, and as you're going through that, I was just taken back to early in 2014. I remember we were sitting down, we were talking to, it was when we used to do, sometimes we would do interviews like the players would be sitting down, like I forget, I can't remember where we were because it wasn't in the lounge. I think it was like there was a sports information office where we did some interviews. I don't think it was the museum. I'm trying to picture where we were sitting. But Ronald Darby and PJ Williams basically said they didn't like some of the ways Charles Kelly was calling the defense. Like they basically said that. And I remember thinking how odd that was because at the time they're still winning football games. So it wasn't like a big controversial. It wasn't like they were throwing their coach on the buses but you just got the sense they didn't really like the way he was calling the game compared to Jeremy Pruitt. Now, it may have been 100% because they didn't like the calls, or it may have been because they didn't believe in Charles Kelly the way they believed in Jeremy Pruitt. And I think sometimes there's some of that, and if these guys believe in Tony White and they maybe sometimes started to lose some of that confidence in Adam Fuller, that could be a big difference too. Sometimes it is scheme. Sometimes it is what you're asked to do and the play calls. Sometimes it's just having that connection with the coordinator that, man, I'm selling out because I believe exactly what he's asking me to do. And if you don't have that, it definitely can affect play.
I'm going to get to a Warchant Premier member allowing for us to balance the discussion. I like that. And we'll get to that comment and question in just a second. But before I do, I would be remiss. It's State Farm agent Russ Vorhis night here on Warchant TV, a.k.a. the Monday Smash. He's been the supporter of the Monday Smash for over 2.5 years now, closing in on 3. And we really, and there's your pun there for the network. I am and Ira we're very fired up about Russ' support because this is somebody who is easy to talk about when we get to this position, when we do a live read, as they call it in the business, a mention about the client, because Russ is a Nole. Plain and simple. He's a Nole who cares about the program as much as you do that are watching this on Warchant TV or listening on the podcast. He's checking in with us via text because he has that kind of privilege, but he's checking in. He's like, is this really going better? Are these coaches actually any better at all? We love Russ for that. Hard on his sleeve. He's pretty blunt about these things, but he's always a great supporter of Florida State athletics, and he's a supporter, Ira, of us here on Warchant TV as well.
Yeah, and his office does great work. They've got really a lot of attention to detail to customer service. And so when you call or when you reach out, make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Sunday or the Monday Smash or at Warchant, and tell them you're Noles because they appreciate that. But it's a good operation. He's been in business for a long time, servicing that Jacksonville area in person. We can go into the shops if you're over there in Jacksonville, or if you're in Florida, Georgia, or Alabama, just reach out, and they can service all of those areas as well. And just a good guy, and talk about FSU football if you get a chance to get him on the phone.
3 states worth of coverage here for you from State Farm agent Russ Ford. So if you live in Georgia, you say, oh, no, the borders don't matter there, man. You're all good. He'll talk to you about the Noles as well if you can get him on the phone. But if you want to call one of his offices, let's do Jacksonville Beach today. The phone number is 904-834-4282. That's 904-834-4282. And his website is his name. It's russvorhis.com for those of you on the podcast to spell it out, RUSSVORHIS.com. So, Garrett, I like this. Checks and balances. I feel you, man. Are we jumping the gun on Tony White? He asks. We all thought Atkins was the next best thing when he got here, next big thing. Tony obviously has more experience, but I think I'm just jaded. It's fair to be jaded. But I think what's true here that we're reporting on, Garrett, we're not talking about, well, the defense dominated the scrimmage, and so therefore they're going to be awesome against Alabama. The players do seem genuinely enthused about participating in this scheme and playing for Tony White in this scheme. The early returns seem to be energetic, and not that energy that Ira, you're describing from 2014 Ronald Darby and PJ Williams giving you like, I'm not so sure energy. It seems like these guys are enjoying the scheme and what it calls for them to do.
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. And I also, think that the fact that he's coached at Nebraska and he's coached at Syracuse, again, this isn't to slam Alex Atkins, but his coaching, his top job before he came to Florida State was at Charlotte. And, I do feel like there's a takeaway there. The other part of it with Alex Atkins is I didn't think he did a bad job his whole time here. I thought, if you go back to his first year here and even his, second and third years here, I felt pretty good about the job he was doing. From what he inherited to what he got to, what blows me away, and I've never really understood it, is what happened going into that last year. Was it complacency? Was it lack of development? I mean, as time went on, you started to see some things that concerned you. The high school recruiting, the development of high school players, how many kids he signed, but then ended up transferring out a year later. That was never a good sign. But there were some positives on the field that made you feel like, okay, Dylan Gibbons is a guy that did nothing at Notre Dame, comes to Florida State, becomes an all-ACC player. So, I mean, we can't act like Alex Atkins was the disaster the whole time he was here. Mm-hmm. It just completely bottomed out at the end. I don't know if it was loyalty to those older guys and asked them to play through injuries. I don't know what it was, but it ended poorly, but it wasn't terrible the whole way. I think we would see through that. And the fact that, Tony White has been to the level he's been at tells you, I think there's some substance there too.
Garrett, we thank you for being a member of Warchant TV. That's Warchant Premier. It's right underneath my half of the screen. It says join. You can click that right now if you want. Warchant TV is always free. So if you like a little bit of perks, like let's see, I see Eric Angel in the chat. If you're on YouTube specifically, you can see the emojis. We've got FSU logos. There's a spear through a gator logo emoji that you can share during the live chats and in your comments. You get a green line on your name, and then also you get access to some of our videos early. We did one this weekend where you got to see the video that Aslan put together of the tour of Doak Campbell Stadium and the renovations at Doak Campbell Stadium. Had that about 24 hours early. We do that often enough that we hope you'll support us here because that support does help us work on other projects to bring you great coverage at Warchant TV. So thank you, Garrett, for being a member. And if you want to join, it's right underneath my half of the screen. A nice little exercise from a contributor tonight, Noel Sage. Thank you very much. I like this one. Question: 2 position groups from any of the former FSU teams that you would switch out with their current counterparts that would all but guarantee a playoff berth. Okay, so position groups that would all but guarantee a playoff berth. And remember, it's not a 14 playoff anymore. So basically you're shooting for what, like 11-1 and then slipping a Benny to somebody in the committee to help you be an at-large ACC team, because that's what it would take. You got any thoughts, Ira, that you would submit?
I I feel like pretty obviously, I think, Jameis Winston would be a big deal. Switching out, quarterback position, that seems too easy because I think that would, I don't know if it would do it, but it would get you a long way there. If I was going other positions, I would say, I think I would say one of the great defensive lines, like maybe, the Florida State, is he saying it any year, any FSU team? Back when you had Corey Simon and Boulware and those guys running around, that defensive line and maybe an elite quarterback, Jameis or Charlie or Wenke. I mean, I think any of those guys and that one of those great all-time defensive lines, I think would be enough for me. What about you?
I would go at Noles Sage. Thank you for becoming a member. Look at that. He didn't just contribute for the show tonight, but he's now a Warchant Premier member. Really appreciate it. And his suggestions are 96 defensive line and 99 wide receiver room. Those would help immensely. I'm going to go trenches as well, but I'm going to go 2014 offensive line. When they moved Cam Irving inside and they brought in young Big Rod Johnson for that game against Miami, that O-line went to places, I think, performance-wise, that not even the 13 offensive line went. They were friggin' awesome. Yeah. So because of what Gus wants to do with this scheme, you give me that offensive line, we're off to a great start. And then secondly, yeah, you could say Jameis, and I could load it on the offensive side. And at that point, I think they're going to make a playoff. But because that's a little easy, maybe I would go with the championship team's linebacker core. You give me Telvin Smith in this scheme, that would be pretty fun. Right. I think that could get pretty fun pretty fast. We appreciate the question there, Noel Sage. As for this team itself, you brought a name up, Ira, a running back name today that appears to be making waves in camp, and that might be your leader in the clubhouse to be RB1 for the fall, at least for, as you put it today, the beginning of the fall. Who is that player, and were you surprised to hear that name was emerging in camp?
Yeah, I mean, I've just the last week or so, I've been hearing a lot about Roydell Williams. The Alabama transfer. He came in last year. Early in the year, they gave him some carries. He didn't do much with it, and then he got injured. He missed like probably 8-9 weeks of the season, and then came back at the very end of the year. I don't even know why they did that. I think they did it because he had a game left and he could still get the red shirt. He's a guy that had played a good bit at Alabama. I mean, he was a part-time starter, mostly a second-team guy. Ran for about 500 yards, I think, his last year at Alabama. Excuse me. And then, they brought him back at the end of the year, but I thought he had gained a lot of weight. He did not look like himself. So the last time people saw Roydell Williams, I feel like was not what is representative of who he is. And then because he did not look very good at all when he came back in the last game of the season. But I've heard he had a great tour of duty. I heard he was one of the standouts in tour of duty, and it looks like he's maybe lost some weight. I think he looks like he's lost weight to me. I'm looking at the rosters. I don't know if I really see a change from last year to this year, but he looks like he's in way better shape. And he's a guy, man, when he came in last year, he was a guy that some people around the program were like, dude, this guy needs to be one of our alphas. He's a leader. He's just a strong dude. Great, locker room guy. And you saw some of that, but then he got hurt and it was kind of completely lost. I've heard really good things about him. I heard he looked good in the scrimmage. And yeah, man, I think he's a guy that, could maybe hold it down. I still think Usman Kromah is going to be the guy. I believe in that kid. I think that kid's going to be a star, but certainly early in the year, I think Roydell might be the guy. I know a lot of people, there's the Keziah camp. A lot of people love Keziah. Jalen's got a ton of talent because he's so quick and athletic. I just don't think he can be your every down guy. Cam Davis, I don't know. We haven't seen enough out of him yet. So right now, I think it might be Roydell. And I'm not bothered by that. Like, I think if you had told me that a month ago or 2 months ago, I might have been very concerned about that. But it seems like I'm hearing good things. What do you think? Yeah,
so the descriptor of him, trimming down, that was in Mike Norvell's comment about Cam Davis and, him being challenged, I think is how Mike Norvell put it, being challenged to trim the excess. I think those are the exact words. It's a very nice way of saying lose the damn weight. He mentioned Roydell at the same time. He's a Roydell also. I think that's a big deal because, again, you also have to go to breakneck pace. If they didn't lose the weight by now, spring camp's going to take it off of them because of all the plays that you got to run. I do think it becomes fascinating, though, whether or not, let's just say Roydell, in fact, continues down this path and he heads into August as your top running back. You do have a lot of guys to choose from. And I know that Gus is going to line them up in different places, especially Jalen Lucas. He's going to line them up in different places to create opportunities, reverses, and all that kind of stuff. But Gus wants to be, by nature, a guy who entrusts a group of ones and then a group of twos. There was one season where he split carries at UCF early on in his tenure, and you saw like a 60-40 split. But he wants to have the bell cow. they've got a lot of different guys there. I just wonder, I'm not trying to put people in the transfer portal before they want to go in the transfer portal. It's just, I think both at receiver and at running back, it's going to get fascinating because Gus is not about line changes. He is not about wholesale package substitutions just because it's the third drive of the game. And I wonder how some kids are going to handle that, because right now they need to be battling for their jobs and their place here in this program.
And listen, man, that'll be a departure from what this program has been doing the last few years. I mean, and for better or worse, Mike Norvell, his coaching staff, David Johnson, running backs coach, they have had, and David Johnson's running back group has been one of the most fun to watch over these last 4 or 5 years because they do love each other. And it doesn't matter who's on the field. They all, going back to Trayshawn Ward and Jayshawn Corbin. I mean, every year there's 2 or 3 guys back there. They're sharing the carries, and they all have great attitudes. They don't care who's got the ball. But that's easier to do when everybody is going to get some touches. Everybody's going to get involved in the game. This is going to be different. When Matt went down and listened to Gus talk, you're talking about just from seeing his offenses and also, reading stats. But, when Matt went and listened to Gus talk at that coach's clinic down in Orlando, he specifically said it. He's like, listen, I'm going to find out who my best post route runner is. And they're running our post routes. And I'm going to find out our best, jet screen guy. And he's going to be getting the jet screens. That is a departure from what they've been doing here. So that is going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But yeah, I don't think it's there's no mystery to it. That he wants those guys and he wants them to go at a breakneck speed. And that doesn't involve a lot of substitution packages.
Yeah, it was more like it's your turn. why are you called to do this? Because it's your turn.
Right.
Which is, I mean, defensively, I could understand that a little bit more than offensively, especially as specialized as football has gotten this year. There's one player who I think is going to be a downfield threat for Florida State. I'm not giving away any trade secrets, but Deuce Robinson, not just because he's part of the Warchant family and from an extended standpoint because of D-Rob, Dominic Robinson, our lead football analyst. Our dad ain't talking to us about this. Whoever you ask of what's going on in camp and you say, give me some names, Deuce is one of the first names that comes up. He's by all accounts had a very good start to his first spring at Florida State.
And man, he's one of these guys that, because the talent, yeah, man, it's exceptional. It's the reason he was so highly recruited coming out of high school, and when he went in the transfer portal as well. So the talent's there. 6'6", can really run, has really good ball skills. I mean, he's a total package. But the other part of it, where I really think he could have a huge impact in this team, is like his professional approach, and just having guys seeing him, the way he works, how hard he works. Because you hear this from anybody you talk to, he is, it's everything you want it to be. Well, now you need the Javon Boggs, a freshman wide receiver who's got a ton of talent, to be at the hip with that guy. And it sounds like he has been. You need guys that, in those other positions to see how the standard he sets. And so, yeah, man, I think Deuce Robinson, I think he's going to make a ton of plays this year, but I also think he could be that guy that really kind of raises, just not I would say the game, raises just the preparation, raises, the approach for other guys, because, he's going to be the one having great success, and he does it the right way.
Yeah, that's, when we had to learn in school about ethos, pathos, logos, one of those, I forget which one it is about speaker's credibility. In order to be a leader, you've got to have the credibility, and that's where, and the skill. In this case, it means you got to be able to make plays. If Deuce is making the kinds of plays that we're hearing that consistently are being made in spring camp, yeah, he can transform that room, which went from a group with Pittman, Micah Pittman when he was here briefly, then Johnny Wilson, and even Hakeem's first year, like dudes who block, dudes who care to do little things for their teammates, even though they don't get the glory of the target, the reception, the yardage, and maybe the touchdown. If you could flip that thing back going the other way, Ira, that's huge, especially in this offense. This isn't an offense that wants to go 5 wide. You're always going to release into a route. You're going to need to have a little bit of snarl to you. And I know that it's funny because it all comes full circle, but Dominic Robinson was especially proud of Johnny Wilson because he worked with Johnny Wilson, and they're coming from the same part of the country. So if you get a little bit of Johnny Wilson and Deuce Robinson to go along with the total package of skill set, and by that I mean the selflessness, Yeah, now you're talking about, extra blocks being made for Jalen Lucas on the perimeter, and that might turn into something. You can see how it gets contagious and it gets fun.
Yeah, and listen, man, Gus is running the show. So if you're not blocking, you're not playing. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, it's going to be non-negotiable. So some of the stuff we saw over the last year or two and was tolerated, and I think that was the frustrating thing for a lot of fans was, and it's one thing to miss a block, it's one thing to have a bad play, but when you don't give good effort, you don't show physicality, but then you keep going back out there, that's when fans get furious. And I think we saw a lot of that. Man, I just do not think Gus Malzahn is going to put up with that. I think he'll play, Camden Fryer before he'll play other guys. If Camden Fryer is the only guy that's going to block, he'll be the one out there blocking because they have to run the football.
We'll take your questions for the next little bit here. We're going to slip in a word from State Farm agent Russ Forrest. In about 15 minutes time, we want to debut a video feature that we think you need to see and be aware of because we're rolling out a lot of new features and a lot of new things that you can count on in terms of spring practice coverage. Since we don't have the footage that we put out every day, the 6 to 8 minutes that we get of the first few periods of drills, we've got some fun stuff for you. So at about 8:05, we're going to run one of those particular videos, and we hope you enjoy it. But we'll be back in 15 seconds to answer your questions right here on the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Forrest.
Contact Russ Forrest for an auto quote today.
Wes in the Villages leads it off. He says, yo, Tom and Ira. Yo, Wes, how's it going? I enjoyed the video of the stadium. Is everything on schedule to be completed for game one? This one's an easy answer. Yeah, correct. Yes, it will be. Right, Ira?
Yeah, and Michael Alford said they're told the construction is going to be done in July. Now, I will say this. Every single person that I talked to that watched that video or looked at the pictures – including some people who've been in there, are like, is this really going to be done? I don't know what it's supposed to look like. I guess, people can't, listen, man, I have no idea. I can't put together a Lego car. So I would have no idea what it's supposed to look like. I just think it's interesting how so many people are like, there's no way that's going to be ready. They say it's going to be ready in July. I mean, that's a lot of wiggle room. And I think they're working 24-hour shifts right now. They're on constantly work on it. If you could drive by Doak at night, they're out there working on it. So they're saying it's going to be ready without question. We'll see.
Out of curiosity, because you got a chance to walk through that this weekend, I just think from the outside, the football-only facility is a really impressive building. The rendering, just looking about the width they had between there and the overpass, the end of the campus, I didn't know how much room they had to work with. I thought that was going to be a skinny-ass looking building, Ira, and it looks fantastic. Like, there's plenty of room. So sometimes things are optical illusions. Were you impressed? Like, I'm not saying on the level, because the football-only facility is supposed to look a certain way, but the underbelly of the stadium, things like that, like, could you just give a sense of how different it is, and did it look like it's got the potential to be cool?
I think the biggest takeaway right now, because again, it doesn't have any of the bells and whistles. It's really just a frame. But what you can get a sense of right now, and maybe other people can get more of a sense of other things, but what I got a sense of right now is it's going to be much more functional. The concourses, I mean, when you say they're twice as wide as they were, I don't know if you really understand it, but man, like, remember when you walk on the concourse and it was like a cattle call, like through like a small tunnel. Yep. Well, now it's 40 feet, it's 20 feet wider. It's over 40 feet wide now. I think it was 20 before, 22. So it's twice as wide. So that's going to be awesome. Just getting in and out of the stadium is going to be nice because it's going to be so much wider. You can see, the additional places they have for concessions. One of the problems they had in the past was they couldn't run electricity to if they wanted to add new concession stands, they really couldn't because they couldn't run electricity there. But now that's all going to be set up. There's a social area, like a social meeting area in the concourse that looks like it's going to be pretty cool. I definitely think, where the people writing the big checks, the founder suites in those areas, you can definitely see how those are going to be awesome. I just don't know how many people are going to access them. I think it was the club section, I think is like 2,400 seats. But that's going to be really cool. They're going to be able to go inside into, to have drinks and things like that. I think from another functionality standpoint thing, this is something that I think you and I will probably. I don't know. Other people might. I don't know. Would other people ever get in the elevator? Is there? Yeah, I guess if you're going to any of the suites,
Yes.
I guess you would be. Yeah,
Yes.
like
There was
the
specifically one of the two towers had more because they would wedge in on the edge of the press box. They'd wedge in a couple of hospitality suites, and if you caught it at the wrong time, you're like, you might as well take the stairs. It's going to be a half hour.
One of the positives now is they've got like a separate, almost like a separate path for all the concession workers behind the scenes, so they don't have to like get on those main elevators to get down to the next floor and all that. Like they've got a whole thing set up for the concession staff, which isn't a big deal, but it's just those things that it just felt like, the way it had always been operated was not efficient. It feels like this is going to be a lot more efficient in terms of the looks of it, the aesthetics. I'm sure it's going to look nice, but man, right now it's so much just cinder block and paneling right now.
I've been cynical about this for a long time. I promise this isn't a trap question. I'm just legitimately wondering, did Wi-Fi come up at all at this particular thing? Because I'm hoping for everybody. I don't need it. I'm here and then I do the post-game show, but I'm praying for the people, Ira.
I'm praying for the people too, Tom. I'm not. I feel like we might still be praying for the people.
Oh no! Oh no!
So
I feel like you answered the question. Oh no!
I tried to find out. I tried to do the good Lord's work and find out if there was some advancements, some great breakthroughs. I don't think that's happening and going to be happening by August 30th.
Oh dear! Somebody needs to create a burner account and give the FSU media password out to like Section 5. Then we'll see what happens. All right, very well. Moving on then. Brad King, what's up, guys? So after these next few practices, what can the players do to become better between then and when summer camps start? Well, I think, first of all, it seems like learning the extra wrinkles of the scheme probably would be at the end of spring practice into fall. Like you might get into some 300 level courses versus the 101 and 201s that they're taking this spring. But it seems like, Ira, that they're being forced to physically get up to speed, quite literally, because of the pace the offense wants to run. That means the defense has to come along for the ride, and that means that you've got to jar some people's mentality to be ready to run at pace like Gus wants to run.
Yeah, I think especially with a new offense and a new defense, the big emphasis is going to be twofold. One is really understanding the playbook on both sides of the ball. And then the other part of it is getting out there on the grass in segment groups and working on some of the chemistry stuff. That one thing Tony White said, and this is something I was hearing anyway, so it was good to hear Tony White talk about it, about how many guys have been coming up and getting extra work in terms of getting in the film room, coming up to the coaches' offices, asking questions. Like you said earlier, like they seem to be inspired by some of the challenges and the complexities of what they're doing on defense. I think the same thing's happening on offense. And so they're coming in to get more and more information. Well, now this spring is going to be like drinking out of a fire hose for most of the spring, especially now if Gus feels like they've got it now. Now we're going to start adding more on it. Well, man, it's going to continue to be a challenge. But now these next few months, you can really kind of digest it all. But the big piece I think that's going to be missing out of the spring at some positions, because you do have some guys out, especially in the offensive line and especially in the secondary, you're missing continuity there. And so that's going to be big, I think, during these next few months is offensive line working together, defensive backs working with linebackers, making calls, because you want to get into camp and hit the ground running. And at that point, it's fine tuning, not really implementing things. So yeah, it's a huge time of year, and that's why they don't let these kids go home anymore. There was a time when football players went home like in May and June, and those days are long gone.
Well, and now I don't know the exact specifics to the letter of the law or the rule book, but now the coaches can be present for workouts on a football field in the summers, which is, that is a departure from decades of rules and NCAA tradition. So that will help as well. We're looking for an over-under here. Keith from Spring Hill wants to know, how many shots of Don Julio will you take after a win over Bama?
Wow. A win over Bama?
Yeah.
I'm going with 4 shots, Tom.
4 shots?
4 shots. Maybe normal shots, though.
I was going to say, in that tube, that looks like a potato gun, barrel that you're drinking out of.
I think I'm going to go 4 shots. They'll be standard regulation shots.
So that would mean like 2 giant tubes of tequila We're working on a tequila sponsor for this fall. Not really, but I'm manifesting it to be. If you actually, Don, tried and true, if you're out there, I know there's some tequila that people want to push. We're taking any bids for the Don Ira Rebirth coming this fall. Hopefully, Keith from Spring Hill just manifest that upset. Young Bleak, appreciate the question here. What do you need to hear to be confident in a 10-win season? I'll start with this one. Health for the defensive line, Ira. Because Jason Jenkins, I think, would be a big piece to the puzzle for the fall if whatever is holding him out of spring can be remedied by that period of time. I didn't like the way that Mike Norvell described or just, relayed the information that Daniel Lyons was going to be out for a period of time because he was kind of like categorized in a different area from Lavalle and one of the other players that went down for spring.
Yeah, I couldn't really tell what to make of that. It was almost like I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell how intentional that was, but I caught the same thing.
Yeah, it was just kind of like that's bitter beer face, like not good. Well, Florida State has some depth there. They're definitely wanting you to know that they like the other guys that are part of the defensive front, especially the transfers that have come in, Tay Diggs and Deontay McCray as well. But for me to start to be confident in a 10-win season, they got to have some bodies on defense because, they're going to run a lot of plays on offense. And so I think that creates a much more pressing need for depth on defense because there's going to be more possessions in a game. And Darrell Jackson's awesome, but I don't think he can run. If we're going to run at an 80 play clip in the running clock era, and maybe Gus wants to run that many plays, you need depth, really some good depth, especially up front on the defensive front.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question. I don't know how I would be confident. I don't know if there's anything I could see or hear that would make me confident because again, I just feel like there's again, I've talked about a lot on headlines and, I feel like that game at Clemson is going to be very difficult to win. So I just don't know how you're going to win that game. I think with their quarterback coming back and playing well now and some of the pieces they have returning, I think that's going to be a huge ask. So now if you're down to 11 games left, how are you going to get – you're going to have to only lose one game the rest of the season. So I'd have a hard time predicting that no matter what. But if you gave me one thing that made me feel like, okay, I would go on the other side of the ball. I'd say the offensive line. Because I feel like Castellanos is going to make enough plays. Some of the skill players you brought in, Deuce and Squirrel, and some of the other young receivers they have, and then some of the running back. I mean, I just feel like there's enough there with Gus's offense that they'll be able to make plays. And I think Tony White will figure it out and scheme it up. But yeah, the line of scrimmage, man, I think we're in agreement that it's going to come from the line of scrimmage. Is the only thing that really could give us a whole lot of confidence. Because if you don't have those, what do you got?
No, 100%. Well, and the whole thing is, what do you need to hear too? Because I think you have the right instinct. Like, I don't know if who's it coming from? Like, is Mike going to lead off the fall press conference with this is the best offensive line? Because people are like, no, I don't care. That la 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 la. They would put their fingers in there and say, no, man, I don't want to hear it. You'd have to see it with your own eyes. So that's a tough part of that exercise. Coming up this week on Warchant.com, Warchant TV, a whole lot of coverage of the next week, the third week of practice, culminating in a scrimmage this Saturday. Scrimmage number 2, right behind scrimmage number 1. We're not quite sure yet if that's the one that we have access to, unless something changed today. But another week of big-time work and a lot of football coverage coming up, Ira, this week. Anything that you want to specifically promote?
Yeah, so we'll either be media access probably either for this scrimmage on Saturday or the 1-2 weeks basically to end the spring. It sounds like those are our two options. Man, we'll be out there tomorrow. FSU's got practice tomorrow and Thursday going into that scrimmage. So, plenty of stuff there. Can I bring up one quick topic? I know we're getting out of here, bro. I want to get your thoughts on one thing. So, because a big topic, it came up on headlines last week, and it's you see conversations on the boards. How are you gonna approach these next 5 months, or 4 months, in terms of just following up on his question about what would you want to hear? I feel like there are some people who are in the camp of I don't care what I hear. I don't care what you say. I'm not going to believe anything good about this team until they go out and play good. I get that, but I'm also like, man, that's 4 months of not feeling good about like your team.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just it's a weird. Is it hurt? Does it hurt so much to not your team not be as good as you hope they're going to be that it's worth not enjoying the 4 or 5 months build up to college? Because that's always been a big part of college football is reading the magazines and just looking at the roster and checking things out and getting excited for it. And then, yeah, you might have your heart ripped out. It's a weird place for me. It seems like a lot of people are just like, I don't care. Where are you? Like, what do you think is what's your approach going to be, and what do you think most people end up doing?
I think that's the pain talking from 2-10, and that's the betrayal that people feel, and they're lobbing grenades every which way. It could be at the coaching staff, it could be at us, it could be like I get that. I'm in one of those weird spots here because this is the program I've loved since I was 4 or 5 year old, and I was first watching sports on television. So for me, I think that's it's the lag effect of 2-10. I still will want to know as much as I can, or no, I want to hear as much as I possibly can hear. I'm not going to intentionally tune it out. I'm going to ask for indicators. We have people inside the program, and that's the privilege of the gig. Is I do want to know. I don't want to. I'm not treating it as well. I don't care. Nothing matters until they play against Alabama. I want to mine for information. I don't know that I'm going to feel the juice in August the same way that I felt the juice last year, if I'm being perfectly honest.
No, I get that. And I don't have a problem. And I don't have a problem with people live your life however you want to do it. There are some people who are scoffing at anything, anything positive. And I get it, man. It comes from, like you said, thinking last year was going to be a good team and it ended up being terrible.
Yeah, I think I would run from hyperbole. Like if somebody behind the scenes says this guy's killing it, I'm more apt to just tune that out rather than, hey, this guy's playing pretty well. Like you have my attention now, rather than jumping to a conclusion of, something is solved. That is where I am burned from last year. Because I mean, again, their scouts were there, and Josh Farmer is rising. His stock is rising as we're approaching the draft. And Azareye'h Thomas did not have a season that was remarkable in any way, and he's going to go very early in the draft. So Florida State had some material players, and I think Darrell Jackson might have been, maybe a borderline day 2 pick.
I've been saying that all along. That was not a 2-10 roster. It was probably a 7-5, 8-4. I think probably an 8-4. Maybe 9-3 roster, which is what a lot of us thought going into the year. Maybe if everything goes great, 10-2.
Yep.
I feel like it was that kind of a roster, but not cohesive the way it needed to be. And then when things went south, man, dudes just checked out. I think a lot of dudes, whether they intentionally or unintentionally, checked out. But it's not like people saw that team. If you had seen that team in person and thought, oh, these guys can't play football, but you've been fed, or that Mike Norvell thought they were going to be great. I think he thought they were probably going to be like a good football team. And I don't think he made that up. So anyway, it is interesting. It's to me, it's just going to be kind of interesting to watch how that plays out over the next 4 months.
Yeah. So I'll give you because it's a layer. I have a layered feelings on it. It's not all one thing. It's like personally, I'm doing any activity. It could be a task at work. It could be I'm playing a sport. If on the golf course, I've got a few bad, dreadful holes in a row on the course. On the next tee box, I'm going to say some hateful stuff to myself before I hit the shot. I'm like, all right, you whatever. Like, let's get your crap together and go. I think that's the energy I'm going to have on game day, rather than like, all right, here it is, game 1. I'm like, all right, come on, guys. Enough of this nonsense. Do not look like fools. Do not look like fools. I swear to God, if you look like unprepared fools, we can't have that. I think that's where a lot of people come from. But I think it's in the middle, man. The truth is in the middle.
And to finish it off where we started, yeah, man, I did hit that eagle putt. It was awesome. Putt of my life, but you're the one that put us there, obviously. We were playing best ball, and Tom is a very good golfer, so he made our foursome feel very good with some of our opportunities to putt for birdies and eagles.
These are opportunities and enjoyment, as Mike Norvell would say. These are opportunities, and that's what a scramble's for. Everybody bails each other out. It was your T-ball on that. We got to go back now. Whose T-ball was it on that particular 15th at Capital City? We have a feature that we want everybody to be aware of, and I know many of you have already found it on Warchant TV. You subscribe to the channel or your Warchant Premiere, and we appreciate that. But Aslan's done a wonderful job through the first few weeks of camp now of if the press conferences aren't your thing, right, and you prefer formats like the wrap, which does extremely well, and it did again over the weekend after the scrimmage. But if you're telling us, hey, guys, let me know what the important stuff is, we have a great feature for you that this is round 3 of what's called the Hodgepodge, which I think is an outstanding nickname. You'll probably get a kick out of the start of it. This is Aslan's latest report from week 2 of spring camp. That's how we're going to conclude tonight's Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Forrest. We want to thank our sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Forrest, and director Ben Spicer behind the scenes. And thanks to Noles for the contribution as well tonight. For Ira, I'm Tom. We hope you enjoy this report, and that's how we're going to sign it off. Good night, Ira.
Good night, Tom.
Their words, my words. Talk is cheap, but it's all we got because practice is closed. It's the Hodgepodge.
Definitely. I feel like chicken Alfredo. Definitely, yeah.
Been a minute, so this will be a recap of week 2 of spring football. First things first, I think he's on to us. At no point were the words good work day uttered in succession, but that doesn't mean Mike Norvell wasn't feeling good about the work. In fact, last Tuesday he rattled off nearly a half dozen standouts without provocation.
James Williams has had a really good last 2 days in pads. I've been really pleased with some of the early strides from Tay Diggs, Dante McCray. Darryl looked good. Amari Williams, has really started off primarily more on the defensive side, trying to get that foundation. I think as we talked about before we started spring, and I'm seeing him get better with every rep that he gets. Offensive side, I think the tight end room's really done a nice job here. I've been pleased with Randy coming in. Mark Keaston, it looks as good as he's been since he's been here. Landon's working to take a good step here, and a guy that been really impressive is Chase Lofton. Andre Otto up front is a guy that's been here, but you're really seeing the confidence in him you start to emerge.
And that was just the opening statement. P.S. over under 9.5 catches for Chase Lofton. Anyways, that's certainly a good sign, yet there's always a little bit of politics at play at the podium from the president of the operation, which is what makes the praise given by Earl Little on that same Tuesday carry a lot more weight.
The dudes on the offensive side of the ball, especially the newcomers at skill positions, who has stood out, who has proven to be like, oh, that's different, that's going to play this year?
It's quite a few of them, actually. But, me specifically, I just want to point out one person that I like, Boggs.
Okay.
Freshman, I like him a lot. He's strong at the top of his routes. He knows how to create separation. And he likes to talk a lot of trash, too. So, I like that about his game.
Who's been the toughest receiver to go against so far?
Toughest receiver? I say Hakeem. Hakeem for me right now, yeah. Hakeem's been pretty nice, yeah.
Oh, man, I hope you enjoyed that, you Hakeem truthers. We're all hoping alongside you. In fact, the hopium hit a little different on Saturday when the clear-spoken and charismatic Tony White laid down high praise and lofty expectations on a trio of defenders.
I mean, D-Jack can literally be the top defensive lineman in the country. Like, Earl has made some of the biggest hits and some of the best plays all camp. You know what I mean? Like, he is him. You know what I mean? He is truly him back there. Jabril, and he plays confident. He makes the next play, but then he misses a play, and then he gets 3 or 4 plays in a row where he's kind of down. It's like, bro, you an NFL DB, man. You don't need to be down. Like, it's going to happen. You know what I mean? It's like, bro, you an NFL DB, man. You don't need to be down. Like, it's going to happen. You know what I mean?
So, yeah, Jabril Rawls, 3-star defensive back from a high school of 660 students whose offers were from Troy, Southern Miss, West Virginia, and Boston College. Apparently future NFL cornerback. So what has gotten into the young man? Well, 9 pounds of lean muscle. He's playing at 185 after tipping the scales at 176 last year.
It definitely does a difference. Me just being more faster, more physical. Because last year I I didn't have this much weight on, so last year I was kind of getting pushed around, I felt like. But this year, yeah, I felt like me with the weight I put on, it does a big difference.
Everyone, meanwhile, hoping for a big difference in offensive production. A large part of that will factor moving at a faster clip in operating. However, the hurry-up will have to wait a little longer before the full Gus Malzahn experience can be unleashed.
Yeah, we have been slower to install, trying to develop a foundation, and then trying to evaluate. I just want it to be where our guys don't have to think so much that we can't evaluate them, so they can play football. So, that there's not a whole lot of scheming going on. It's more of installing your plays, trying to get really, really good at the foundation. Hopefully the second part of spring we'll try to get a little fancier and all that, but this is a base offense at this time.
One thing that has been apparent is an attitude and sense of confidence that is starting to shine through from the offense. In fact, it's captured the attention of the man tasked with extinguishing that swagger.
He's one of the best in the country, period. I feel like if I can be prepared for that and what we go against every day, then chances are we're going to be just fine. I give him mad respect, just schematically wise, just what he's doing, but also like you feel the attitude over there. Like you feel like an attitude, and that's the thing. Like that's the thing that's hard to combat. Schematically wise, you can gain an advantage here and there with an extra guy, but when a team believes, when an offensive side or the defense side, they believe they're better than you are, that's the thing that's hard to overcome. And so you can see that attitude that's starting to take shape over there with Tommy and Coach Malzahn and his staff, and it's fun to watch. Iron sharpens iron, right?
Meanwhile, the buzzwords for the players center on cohesion and leadership as they try to quickly integrate a slew of transfers who will be heavily relied upon. And so far, it sounds like everyone is doing their part to make this work.
After a season, a team has needs, and they bring guys in, and it's on you to, on the coaches and on us to mesh and, come together as a unit. So I think that we're doing our best. I think the whole team's doing their best. There's new guys everywhere. And I think that the best thing for us is that those guys, all the guys that have been here, really embraced us. And I think that just makes the whole process so much easier, as opposed to if we came in and we were, they weren't, as forgiving or caring about us, looking out for us, making sure we're on the right track. It's the complete opposite. They're looking out for us and they're making sure, that we're doing the right stuff. And I think that makes the whole process easier.
Lastly, it's now been 2 weeks of Mike Norvell's CEO. He's always been mobile at practice, jumping, running from unit to observe. But with seasoned, proven coordinators, has that changed Norvell's ability to coach with more intention?
I do. I think there's that's one of the things I've really enjoyed, about this. And you say the last couple of months, this is just the winter program, spring, as we're getting into it. Being able to take times and go and sit in with the defense staff, be on the just a little bit more involved in making sure that the standard's being hit.
The answer was from a question from Warchant managing editor Ira Schofel. So come home to warchant.com to get stories crafted by him and much more for only $1 a week for a whole year. And if you act now, we're even going to throw in a $20 gift card to Garnet and Gold. FSU back at it on Tuesday. Check out Wake Up, JCS, and everything else in the interim. And hit the thumbs up, please.